Wales has long been seen as the land of revivals of old, but with that narrative has come a lot of misunderstandings about the Welsh people and our culture. I have sat in many meetings and conferences while prophets and preachers have bashed this land and my people, saying things like, "You have missed it. You have given in to Satan's agenda over your nation. You are a stiff-necked people. There is no prophetic voice in Wales," and the list goes on. But whilst we are a stubborn people, we are also a lovely people. And from the outside looking in, you may think that there is not much going on inside this little country. But trust me, my friends, there is so much happening here. So let's bust some assumptions, shall we? I have heard so many people from outside our land saying that Wales has no prophetic voice. Well, that is utterly wrong. The prophetic voices in Wales have never been louder and more confident. However, one person's voice doesn't shout louder than the rest. We are united in our voice over our nation. Our collective prayers and declarations are in unison. We don't need a platform to show it, popularity to make it credible, or money to turn it into a fruitful ministry. We are after the Lord's heart and his voice. So you could say that we are miners, not just culturally in our work life, but spiritually. Our work is underground, digging for a coal that will keep the fire of revival lit in our wonderful nation. Yes, it doesn't look like it, but remember we are hidden, and at the right time, we will come up from our digging and produce the goods. But right now, we are learning the character needed to sustain the move of God. So please hear this in the right heart. We do not care if you are a prophet, a pastor, a famous preacher, a voice piece to the nations, a popular worship leader. You are not Jesus. We are not in pursuit of you and your ministry. We are in pursuit of Christ himself. We will love you and honour what you do, but we are listening to Jesus first and foremost. Preacher Jackie Hill Perry from the States said this very profound statement: "Do not be overexposed and underdeveloped." Now, I know in recent years Wales has been renowned for many outpourings and failures of men in positions of responsibility. And that's what happens when we are underdeveloped and overexposed. I believe at this time, God has been moving on the hearts of many Welsh folk, producing character in them that will have the ability to not just usher in his move, but will be able to sustain it. That takes time, lessons, experience, and work. All have been happening in pockets all over this land. Again, you can't see it from the outside because it's being done in the secret place. But it's happening, and dare I say, we are about ready. Now, I want to address our flag. I've lost count how many times our flag has been hissed at, spat at, degraded and dishonoured. And what some people have seen as a curse over our nation is actually a blessing. So let's bust some myths. The dragon is not modelled on or created in likeness of the dragon spoken of in Revelation. For starters, the Welsh dragon doesn't have 7 heads. If we are going to look for similarities between our dragon and anything in the Bible, it would be more similar to the seraphim. However, let's take a look at the Old Testament, where God told Moses to put a bronze fiery serpent on the end of a pole and raise it up, so that whoever looked upon it would be healed. This is what Wales stands for, my friends. It's a heavenly standard raised that says if you look upon us, you will see Jesus. Maybe this is why we have had so many revivals. Who knows? All I know is that we are not precious over our Welsh flag. It's just a flag at the end of the day. However, please do not mess with our statement. In Christ alone, our hope is found. So leave our flag alone. It's fine just as it is.
Winston Churchill, if you follow some of the old footage, he would make this symbol. When we weren't doing so well in the war, the fingers would be like that. When we had the upper hand against the Germans, he turned it to that. It became the sign for victory. And there was this distinct difference, but he knew his history, and so one of the films that was made as a Winston Churchill, his secretary explained, Mr. Churchill, you do understand that that's not a very nice thing to do. And he sort of dismisses that. He was an historian, and in the film they had a bit of poetical license, but he was an historian. He knew full well what he was doing. And in the darkest days of World War II, when America hadn't joined in the fight yet, we were on our own. All the troops had to be taken off sort of Europe, nearly lost an entire army, and things weren't looking so good. But in that time, you'd see him. We've still got our fingers. We're still in the fight. You haven't taken us out. You haven't put us on that footing, and if you like, that we are not capable of fighting back at you. We are still in the fight.
Many years ago, my father was invited to speak at a conference which was aimed at bringing the prophetic voices of the British Isles together. But like so many meetings and conferences I've been to, Wales was in the spotlight. But this time turned out very different.
For the people on the right, for the people on the left, for you at the back, right? But to set the scene on it, the Friday evening of this conference, prophetic conference, was quite harrowing, for want of a better word, because there was a load of people from all different nations coming in. And one of them, and there's an old story about the Welsh flag and the sort of prophetic purposes of that flag over this nation. And, people were sort of tearing it up and stamping on it and all that. Not that we are precious about the flag, but, you want to find out sometimes, open your eyes, open your ears to a prophet. Why is that happened? Why is that over there? Because it might not be as negative as what you think. So that was going on, and then it was like just one after the other, these guys, saying, Wales, you've missed it. You've missed it. You've missed your opportunity. You've missed your time. Because it was just after the 100th anniversary of the 1904 revival. And so you've missed your time. You've missed your opportunity. It's all finished. It's, and we've come in now to tell you that and to prophesy and to put you back on the right path. And it was okay. It was good. It was a great evening. Worship was good. Everything fine. But I found that quite alarming. And certainly from the situation and circumstances we were in at that time. Because I didn't think we'd missed it. I thought that, hang on, we're pushing through here. So anyway, I was asked to speak on the Saturday morning. I was going through a lot of personal problems as well at the time. My wife was in hospital with suspected heart problems, and there were lots of issues going on. And you know what it's like. I hope I'm speaking to some pastors out there, that sometimes you just can't play the game. You just don't want to play the game. You just don't want to go along with this. Everybody's saying the same thing, and you know full well, just in your heart and through what God's doing with you, I've got to say something different. Not for the sake of it, but because you just feel it's right. So I said, here we go. And I just went like that. For the people on the right, for the people on the left, for you at the back, right? Well, my friend was at the front. He slid down, so his head was behind the back of the chair. He went white, and there was an audible gasp, as I was expecting. I said, right, let me explain to you what that's all about. Now, the bowmen of Gwent fought against the French, fought for the English, but against the French. And in that sort of period of time, they'd go out there and they'd sort of fire off, they'd have the big long bows and all that, and 6 foot long, long bow. And you'd have to train from very early on in life to pull this thing. I mean, the straining power on it was phenomenal. You could break your back, apparently, if you didn't pull it right. So from little kids, these bowmen of Gwent would learn how to pull the bow. And so they'd go to fight with the English against the French. And, they'd be in the sort of battlefields and battle array, and of course we'd have the upper hand because we had these longbows and this ability to pierce armour. The knights, because you're talking back in medieval times, so the knights would all be dressed in their armour, but these bows and the arrows being fired from them go straight through the armour. So they were quite feared in those wars. But on a few occasions when the English didn't win and the French would overrun the lines, and they'd capture people, and of course they'd capture the Welsh guys. They wouldn't necessarily kill them. There is a few accounts that they were killed, but most of the time they'd get hold of the bowmen and they'd chop their fingers off so that they couldn't pull the bow anymore. Basically useless. You're better off going back home because you're no longer a bowman. And that's what they do. Now, if they managed to escape, they went back into the next battle. One of the things that they do to the French lines that would just wind them up is that they'd show, I've still got my fingers. Right? I've still got my fingers. In other words, look out, because there's a volley of arrows coming your way right now, and we have got the ability to take your men out. So it was a symbol of defiance, if you like, this sort of this two-finger thing. It turned into what it is today. But originally it was that symbol of, tough luck. We've got the upper hand. We still got our fingers. We're still in the fight. And so when it says in the psalm, you train my fingers for war, it's about using the bow. Right? And of course the bow is prophetic. The bow and arrow are very much prophetic symbols. So it's about pulling that bow. So I said, folks, I know you're taking offence, forgive me please, right? I don't want to cause offence to people, but we need to get a point over right now. Wales is not out of the fight. Wales hasn't missed it prophetically. We're on target for a move of God in this land, yet again in this generation, that will spread all over the world. And we are still in the fight. And explain about Winston Churchill and all that. We're still in the fight, but I put it to the scriptures. You train my fingers for war, and that's what the Lord was doing, still is doing in this nation. He's training us for the next season.
We are a nation of pure hearts, just like David. We don't look that impressive on the outside, but we have been trained to take giants out and to usher in the presence of God. We know who we are, and it's not based on our history. It's based on who He says we are.
We have these gatherings in Wales. Well, we have a thing in Wales called the Cymanfagani. Cymanfagani is a lot of people get together and sing hymns very fervently, with oil, with passion. And that's okay, it's fine, it's part of the culture. But sometimes our remembrance of the 1904 Welsh revival can be like that. Let's all get together in the same room, let's all pray, let's all with further now, and God will move again. Well, that's not the track record that God does in this nation. He pulls people from obscurity to do strange things that are oftentimes contrary to what's happening in the churches and contrary to what's happening in culture.
There's a beautiful Welsh song which perfectly tells of this position of heart in us. Calon Lan.
Nid o'i'n gofyn bywyd moethus, air y byd na'i berlau man. Gofyn wyf am galon hapus, calon honest, calon lan. Calon lan yn llawn daioni, te cachur na lili dlos, dim ond calon lan all gani,
I have not asked for a life that's easy. Gold and pearls so little mean. I only ask for a heart that's honest, a heart that's true, and a heart that's clean, a heart that's clean and filled with virtue, fairer than the lilies white. Only pure hearts love God truly. They praise Him all the day and night. So whatever you think of us and whatever presumptions you have, know this: we still have our fingers and we are ready. So Wales, listen up. You have not missed it. Keep digging, keep pressing forward. We are in this together and we will see revival here again.
So it was a bit of a wake-up call, and people took it in the right spirit, and the rest of the day went fine. In fact, it put the rest of the day on target, I believe. There was a worship leader there. I'm not going to mention no names. There was a worship leader there, and he'd written part of a song, and about the sled, this threshing sled of God, when God's judgment, when He comes in and He starts moving. And the battle axe and all that. It was all those type of things about war and what God uses, and all those quotes that God's a warrior, God's mighty battle axe. He was trying to work on another verse. And when I said about you train my fingers for war, that's my verse. And he wrote an entire verse then, and he was leading worship in the evening. So all right, let's fast forward to the evening event. I like fun. God is full of fun, folks. And so there was a couple of thousand people there. But of course, there was this core of leaders that were there, and people at in sort of leadership that were in that morning session. And so this fella gets up to lead worship, and come on, folks, we're going to worship the Lord, and explained about what happened in the morning, and explained about the song, right? But not really fully. He said, God spoke this morning, and I've been able to finish this song now, in accordance to what was said. And I think it's a declaration we need to declare tonight. Well, anyway, he started to lead off, and everybody that was there in the morning, they started to make their way down the front, and we began to worship and all that. But when it came to that verse then about you training my fingers for war, instead of doing this, they all did this. And you could see. I just looked behind at the stalls, because it was like a sports stadium, so the seating was all banked up. And I looked, and there was a couple of thousand people with their jaws dropped to the floor, thinking, "What on earth is going on here?" The worship leader spotted it, and he explained, and he stopped and said, "Hang on, let me tell you all what happened this morning." And it really released that spirit of, instead of hopelessness that we had on the Friday night, and that we are now dependent on somebody coming in to tell us what to do, which often happens in Wales, by the way. Right? No, God was doing something in the land. God was doing something from the land. God was showing us that there's a training process going on. There's an ability, right, being released in the prophetic realm that needs to come from the land. Not outside to the land, but out from the land to the nations.